Welcome back to Novel Idea. My name is Dia, and today I have got a review for you. So since we last spoke, I have read 10 books, and several of them I'm going to go over fairly quickly, and then a couple of them I want to take just a little bit longer with and talk to you about them. The first one that I will tell you about is Castle Hangnail. This is by Ursula Vernon, who is also known as T. Kingfisher. And I heard about this from Reed Becca, and I'm so thankful that she told me that Ursula Vernon was who T. Kingfisher is the pen name of, and that she had actually written some middle grade and children's literature. And so I went on a hunt, and she said that Castle Hangnail is her favorite of all of the ones that she has read so far. And I have to agree. Out of the ones that I have read, which is just a couple of hamster princess books, and then this one, I really, really liked this story. It's the story of a very young witch who doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in her power. She happens to be the evil twin, even though she isn't evil, but her other twin is very, very good. And so she goes off on a kind of quest to have her own castle and to become the master of that castle and have some henchmen who are different kinds of ghouls, and to make a difference in the world in some way. And it was delightful. It was just a delightful read. So I really enjoyed that one. There's a little bit of a mystery to it too, just so you know. Then very quickly, I will tell you I read A Bone to Pick by Charlaine Harris, which is book 2 in the Aurora Teagarden mysteries. I think that's probably as far as I'm going to go with Aurora Teagarden. For some reason, it's just not capturing me, and so I think I'm going to just move on. There are lots of cozy mysteries out there. So I also read Murder in Old Bombay. This is by Nev March, and I again thought this was good, but it's just not quite the style, the type of cozy mystery that I want to read, and so I'm not going to move on in that series. Once Upon a Seaside Murder, and this is by Blackburn. We are on a seaside in a bookshop. Again, on paper, everything that it seems like I would like. And I did like this one probably the best out of all of the cozy mysteries I read this month, but it still just was not quite what I was looking for in a cozy mystery. I like banter, and I like characters that I can really kind of wrap my heart around, and none of these really had any of that. So the last one that I'll tell you about is A Peculiar Combination. That was by Ashley Weaver. Again, it was not quite cozy. It's a historical fiction mystery. And so we are following a family of housebreakers, and basically, she has grown up learning how to become a safecracker, and her family is very, very good at it, and they get recruited by the government to help with their campaign against the Nazis. And so I liked it, and I'm going to continue to look for more by Ashley Weaver, but this just didn't quite do it for me. All right. Then I want to talk to you about Tarzan. I finally finished Tarzan, and I finished this with Dave from Book Blather. Dave and Olive read this with me, and it was absolutely wonderful. I loved it so much. And so I just wanted to take a couple moments and talk to you about Tarzan, and I made notes. And so first thing is it was by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and it's probably his most well-known series, but it was at the time not his most popular. He is not a politically correct author. I mean, it was written in the early 1900s, and so that sort of makes sense because political correctness looked different back then. But the way that people are treated in this novel is not always the way that they should be treated. And it is not always the way that they should be spoken of either. And so there is that element to it. But if you can get past that fact, the writing in this book was absolutely fantastic. And I did not expect that. It's pulpy fiction, and so I expected it to just kind of have that cheese factor. And there are moments, but for the most part, it is wonderful storytelling, fantastic writing, and he throws us right into the story. It's a serialized novel, so it was written initially in short segments, and then they put them all together and put it into a novel. And you can tell that because it moves along at a little clip. And we skip sometimes 5-10 years between chapters, but you don't notice it. You don't feel like you're missing out on anything, I should say. It's not that you don't notice that, oh, wow, he's considerably older. It's that you don't miss those intervening years. The way that he writes everything just feels like it's moving at exactly the pace it should be. So very low stakes as far as Tarzan and Jane go, because most people know this story. And so you know that no matter what Tarzan gets into, it doesn't really matter because because Tarzan is going to be okay because we've got more story with Tarzan. So we know that Tarzan's going to be all right. So it's fairly low stakes in that way. That does not mean that Edgar Rice Burroughs doesn't write in a manner that is sometimes a little grotesque and sometimes a little gory and sometimes a little intense. It does not mean that that does not get written. It's just that we know that Tarzan's going to be okay. Because I went into this thinking that it was going to just be a pulp fiction kind of fun romp kind of a novel, I didn't expect to really find character development. I didn't really expect to find myself loving certain characters and wanting to know what was going to happen next to those characters. So that was really a surprise. I had so many characters in this book that I really enjoyed. There were times, like I said, where things were far-fetched, and that came in the form of Tarzan himself. He's a bit of a superhero in this story. So he has super strength and super sense of smell and sense of hearing, and he is quite intelligent, and he has a very well developed intuition. And so he comes across in many ways as if he is this superhuman when he is just human. The other thing that I found just a little far-fetched was when he wasn't in the jungle. I'm not going to give you any kind of spoilers, but I'll just say that there's part of this where he is not in the jungle, and there are a couple things that happen when he is not there that I find really unbelievable. But at the same time, he's Tarzan and he is a superhero. So we can believe it in that way. The language in this book is older. It's archaic in some ways. And so you really kind of have to piece out sometimes what Edgar Rice Burroughs is trying to say, but it's worth it. I just found his writing lovely. And I have no qualms with the way that this book is written. The sentence structure and the imagery both are beautiful. Unexpectedly, it is very funny at parts, and Tarzan has quite a sense of humor. It's clean. That was another thing that I really appreciated about it. It has a little bit of language, but it's mild. It has a little bit of like objectifying a human as far as just the way that they look and what kind of sexual prowess they must have as a result of the way they look. But it is a clean novel as far as foul language and sexuality goes. He does not hold back though when it comes to like fight scenes and fighting animals and other people. There are times where you do get a little bit grossed out. And then the last thing that I will say about Tarzan is that it completely left me on a cliffhanger. And so I have already ordered the second book, and as soon as it comes, Dave and I are going to read the second one together. It's called Tarzan Returns, so we will be reading that one together. And the next book that I would like to talk to you about is Tigana by Guy Gavriel Kay. So Tigana, I read with Jack from Spread Book Joy. I read it with Gemma from Gemma Books and Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. And this is my second attempt at a Guy Gavriel Kay book. I read The Summer Tree a year or two ago, not sure which, but I did not like it at all. And I thought, okay, so this author is just not for me. And then a couple of booktubers who have similar, not super close, but similar taste to me when it comes to other books that I read, liked Tigana. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And Jack wanted to read it also, so the two of us decided to do it. And then we roped a couple of other people in. Sandy actually read it because it was one of her subscribers' favorites from this past year. Oh, let me just tell you a little bit about Tigana. It is a fantasy book that reads a lot like a historical fiction. It's a country that was invaded by two tyrant sorcerers and is now being ruled by them. The king of that country and two of his sons and his best friend were supposedly wiped out at a battle when the king of that country killed the son of one of the sorcerers. One of the things that is brought up at the very beginning of this book is that they kind of know that they have no hope of defending this country, but they're going to die trying, and of winning against these two sorcerers. And they are very thankful that the best friend and the king are both very thankful that they have children that were left behind, that are not at this battle with them, that are going to be able to remember them and carry on. their name, carry on the traditions, carry on the upholding the spirit of this country. And so I really thought that this book was going to be about memory and remembrance. And it was an element of it. There are a ton of characters in this book. Many of them have very similar names. So I found that a little bit hard. Like I could remember who did what, but I couldn't remember the name of that person. And that was a little difficult for me. I'm not used to that. I read a lot of fantasy, and having to remember the difference between Alison, Elias, Alberico, and some of the countries even that they were from. So there's provinces within this country, and some of those provinces even started similarly to the names. And so then I was having to differentiate between people and places. And that was very hard for me. But I made myself a cheat sheet, basically, is what I did. The world and events in this book are very believable, and they are very beautiful. They're beautifully written. He is very good at world building. I think that the quality of the writing and the prose work and the turn of phrase that he incorporates were masterful, just beautiful. There are themes of home. Music is used as a story hook, wine and ritual, and there is lore, and all of those are kind of hooks for this story. Character-wise, I think the characters were distinctive. I think that they were well placed, I guess. I knew when one person was talking, I could tell who was talking, whether there was a said so and so afterwards. However, I didn't connect with a single one of these characters. There was no emotional investment from me for any single one of them. And there was one that I thought that I was going to really be invested in. But so many times in this story, and people are going to disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. But for me, there were so many times where I thought that I knew a character. I knew their morals. I knew their standards. I knew what they wanted to uphold. And then they would do something or say something that was completely the opposite of what I thought I knew about them. And so that in and of itself made it difficult for me to grab onto and root for and get behind or wrap my heart around any single one of the characters. And so it felt like there was this kind of wall, this barrier that I couldn't break through. So you follow this story from all sides. That's one of the things about having so many characters. We get to follow both of the tyrants. We follow several people on both sides of the borders, and several people from the country that was conquered. And that was kind of nice in some ways, but the way that he wrote it, we got a lot of info dumps, and I'm not a huge info dump person. I can handle it once, maybe twice, but we got a lot of it, people remembering back and having to retell us things, and we just got a lot of background that wasn't told to us in story form. It was told to us either in memory form or here's this. We're just going to line it out for you. I just didn't have an anchor. I told the ladies at one point that I feel like what I was missing in this book was like an actual centralized storyline that I could really grab a hold of and just kind of, you know, pivot from. And the reason for not having that was because of the fact that we were being told so many different perspectives and so many different angles that it didn't feel cohesive to me. It felt very fragmented. And so the investment for me just never developed. It was never there. So even though I felt like, especially the first 5 chapters and the last 5 chapters were something that I could appreciate, there was so much in between there, 10 chapters worth in between there, that I felt like there was so much superfluous information or superfluous activity or superfluous memory that was going on. And so it made it just very difficult. And even though I normally wouldn't bring up things that could be trigger warnings, I do want to say that the main thing about this book that made me not like it was not only the amount of sex in this book, but the fact that it was gratuitous and it was completely unnecessary to the story. I know that people are going to argue with me about that. I'll get to that in a minute. And then on top of that, having women be characterized in such a way that it was demeaning the entire way through the book. They were objects, they were possessions, they were afterthoughts, they were themselves countries to be conquered. And that to me was, I got angry a couple of times in this book, to be honest. All right, now let me say that I know that Guy Gavriel Kay says, I did read, says that he was using all of this sex as a tool of exploring a society and people who have no control over anything. Basically, they have been conquered. They don't have the right to rebel. They don't have rights. So they don't have control over anything, and they are reaching to be a master of something. But this went way beyond that, in my opinion. So there was constant thought about men undressing women, what he would be doing to her in bed if he could only get her there. Homophobia was in here, prostitution, masturbation, boy toys, virginal sex, Stockholm syndrome, incest, nymphomaniac, BDSM, ritual sex, pedophilia, all of it, and I do mean all of that, is in this book. So people say, well, why don't you just skip it? Well, when it goes on for pages, and as soon as you think you've gotten past one thing, you enter into the mind and thoughts of someone else who is there and it's focusing there. It's very difficult to skip and feel like you are having any kind of cohesive story. The ending of this book happens all at once. Hurry up, we're done. That's the way that it feels to me. I think I am, I don't think, I know I'm in the minority in not caring for this story. It just was not my cup of tea. And I think that's probably the last of Guy Gavriel Kay that I will be reading. Then I read The Death of Mrs. Westaway from Ruth Ware. And this was a recommendation from my friend Michelle over at Books Cause Insomnia. This is about a girl who has lost her mother. She thinks that she has no family. She gets a letter from a lawyer who says, your grandmother has died. You are named in her will. Please come to, such and such house, and we will be going over the will. And she has always been told her grandmother passed away when her mother was still young. And so she thinks that they've got the wrong person. And yet she really wants family. She's somebody that desires that. And so she goes sort of in hopes of maybe being able to pay off her bills and also to gain some family maybe. And her mother's name is the same name as the woman in the will, but she just knows that can't possibly be the truth. And so anyway, I don't want to give anything away. So thank you, Michelle, for recommending it. It was just so nice to kind of escape some of what was going on in Tigana. And then lastly, very last thing, I read Ithaca by Claire North, and it was wonderful. We are being told the story of Penelope and her women in waiting, and Electra and one other woman in particular. And we are being told the story of how she is ruling without really letting anybody know that she is ruling, because women are still seen as people that are incapable. And so she has been waiting for her husband to come home from war for 18 years and has not remarried. And so we are being told her story from the narration of Hera, who is the god of motherhood and married women. It was wonderful. I thought her research was very good, and I really enjoyed just hearing Hera's kind of snarky, sarcastic voice when it came to certain things, and I just loved it. I loved it. So that was Ithaca. Oh, I forgot. I do have one more. It's called Nooks and Crannies, and I cannot remember the author's name. Picture. This was originally something that I considered for middle grade March, and also for March Mystery Madness, because it is both. And it was just this lovely little simple story about a girl who gets an invitation to come to a weekend at this wealthy, philanthropic, elderly woman's chateau. And they are going to, or she and 5 other children have been invited to come. The whole thing kind of revolves around these children and who they might really be, because come to find out, all of them were adopted. And so it's that kind of a story. It's predictable, it's easy, it's a middle grade but I loved it. And I love the way that middle grade books just have very low stakes. You can invest your heart into them and know that your heart is safe. And so this was no different, and I really enjoyed it and I had so much fun. I just finished it last night. So that's everything from me, you guys. I am currently reading, the only thing I am reading right now is Amari and the Great Game. And I'm probably about halfway through that. And so that's the only thing that I am reading besides my Lent read. And those are just little, they're just moments in my mornings. And I'm using those for Lent to kind of focus in on what this season is. And so that's it. That's all I've got. You already heard my middle grade March TBR, and I'm sure that there will be more things that I end up picking up that I have not mentioned, but I will tell you about those as I read them. So I hope that you guys have had a wonderful February. I'd love to know, what was your favorite read in February? You can tell me down in the comments. And have you read any of the books that I did? Did you like Tigana? Because like I said, I think I'm the minority of the people that have read it. Have you read Tarzan? Did you like that one? I just had the most wonderful buddy reads this month, even though I don't think there was a single one of us that loved Tigana. So anyway, tell me down in the comments if there is any of these that you read and loved, and if you are taking part in middle grade March, kind of what you're really most looking forward to maybe. Okay, thanks again for joining me today. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next video, everybody. Bye.